Hello, John Richardson here, host of Richardson's Rubicon. The following episode is an interview I did with Mike Oppenheim. He's the author of The Curse of Cortez. Now then, it's a bit of a hybrid interview, this one. And the reason I say this is that we do, yes, concentrate on world building, but his novel is more around a thriller, really. But it does have a magical object in it which affects and creates rules around everybody who comes into contact with it. So the world building is present very much so in there. So now where we go into a little bit of a philosophical chat and all these other bits as a way of avoiding spoilers, try and keep an eye out for the mechanics, which are basically the Talisman's rule set, how it warps trust, and how place and pursuit do a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of the storyline. So, right, anyway, let's just jump in, shall we? Hello and welcome to the show. My name is John Richardson and I'm the host of the Richardson to Rubicon podcast. We're talking world building in speculative fiction, and tonight I've got with me Mike Oppenheim, who is the author of The Curse of Cortez. Hello, Mike. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks, John. It's really cool to be on the show, and I love that intro.
Excellent. Great. So, The Curse of Cortez. Welcome. So, for listeners who haven't yet read your book or met Emma, what goes wrong the moment she inherits this talisman, and why can't she just hand it over and walk away?
So there's two things at work, and one of them would be a spoiler of the whole book, so I'm going to kind of like doggedly answer the question,
Edge away,
which is that the person who gives it to her is very important to her, and he gives her an immense feeling of hope, but also like a responsibility to not get rid of it. So that's one of the reasons, and I can't explain why she cares so much about keeping this talisman because this person gave it to her. But the second reason, which is really immediately obvious and part of why it's a page turner, is that she's compelled not to get rid of it. There's something weird about it, and it's not an addiction because it's not something like that. It gives her like a dopamine hit or something like that. It's more that every time she starts to think better about keeping it and maybe to relate some of the negative harm that's going on because of it, something deeper inside of her just refuses to get rid of it, which I could liken to kind of how different societies and cultures just glom on to bad ethical behavior and for whatever reason, despite a better awareness of what the right decision would be, just continue to behave, for lack of a better word, unethically. Although the talisman is not making Emma behave unethically, but the talisman's effects are certainly creating havoc around her.
Okay, so I'll come back onto those effects a bit later. Do you want to just sort of give people a summary of your book then? A safe summary, if you guess. I mean, I do.
Yeah.
If you do have any spoilers, just let me know, and I'll just put a spoiler alert on. It's not a problem.
Okay. Well, I don't think it's a huge spoiler, and also this is my sixth novel, so I'm getting used to like how to get someone to actually read a novel versus like I'm an author and I don't want to ruin anything. So I think it's okay and safe to say that the novel is actually narrated by two different people. It starts out with Emma, and then very abruptly it switches to a second character whose name is Mark, and Mark is the person who gives her the talisman. And so Emma's version of the story is just from first person immediacy, starting with her in childhood, and then it jumps very quickly to her in her early 20s, which is where she'll be throughout the novel. And Emma is a very poor, parentless child who was brought up by her mother and six, I think, stepdads, a revolving door of bad relationships. No significant abuse that, like I'm not trying to write about child abuse. It's just general bad parents and role models.
A bad experience, basically.
A bad experience. And school doesn't treat her kindly. She's considered dumb and ugly. And she considers herself to be dumb and ugly. She works in a supermarket, same shift all the time. She has no friends. Her best friend dies as the novel starts, and he's an 89-year-old neighbor who has cats that she helps take care of. And so she's all alone in the world, and she meets a strange man, and the man comes to her asking for help. And that man ends up being Mark, who narrates the second part of the novel. And then the third part of the novel is once again narrated by Emma. And so
Oh,
part one explains how Emma gets the talisman and what it starts to do to her. Part two explains how Mark got the talisman and what it did to him. And then part three explains what Emma's going to do now that she knows what the talisman is really doing, and how it's a curse, which it, as the title alludes to, is from Cortez, the famous Spanish explorer, I guess, for lack of a better word.
yeah. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and so I think that's a good synopsis for now. If you have any questions, or if I said something that teased something you want me to, linger on, I can.
Okay. So, this talisman, are there, I think there are some rules around the talisman, aren't there? There's about 5 rules?
Yeah, and it's yeah. When I wrote the novel, I didn't write it linearly and thinking in like the rule of five or what you're quoting.
Mm,
So forgive me if I don't name all five, but if you have them written down, you can provoke my memory. But the first rule of the talisman is that no one can just like take it from her, even if she like leaves it on the ground, it's hers. Like there's a gravity with the talisman back to her. And what the talisman does, the main rule is it prevents any real harm from happening to her, but not to people around her or anyone around her. The third rule, which is not really a rule, but it's part of the problem, is everyone covets the talisman, even if they cannot see it. They feel like a gravitational pull
like a
towards it.
presence, yeah.
Yeah, and they want it. They covet is the best word I could come up with. Like,
So, yeah. So if these people are wanting the talisman, and you mentioned something like I don't know whether it was gravity you mentioned, but what happens when they try to take the talisman? What an
they don't
example there?
try to take it. They try like there's a scene which I definitely spoiler alert. I'm not going to
Hang
ruin,
on,
but it's
hang on, hang on.
Alert, alert. We have a spoiler alert. Skip forward a few seconds.
There we go.
there's a scene where every pivotal character in the novel is in the same room trying to get the talisman from her, and they're trying to reason, but also use coercive elements such as guns and threats and things like that. But despite all their best efforts, they are unable to get it. But then the biggest part of the novel that I don't think this is a spoiler alert because I don't mind advertising this. There's a weird, scary, freakishly strange, abnormal, superhuman, if not just non-human entity constantly chasing after her to get the talisman back. And that entity is not friendly, nice, or caring about anyone else, and it does not work for any human. And so that's actually the biggest problem for Emma is dealing with that. And then the other issue is that she makes a new friend along the way, and it's her neighbor, but then she's constantly dueling with whether the neighbor is being nice to her because she likes her or whether the neighbor is being nice to her because she wants the talisman. And I'm trying to like really get into like what I perceive as like sycophant culture in not just America but all over the world. Like this idea that if you become important, it's really hard to tell why people are being nice to you.
Right, that's very good. Yeah, I like that angle. So what brought that on? What inspired you to to write
Um,
that?
I think part childhood fantasy. As a child, I was not. I have to be careful how I describe this. I wasn't unpopular, but I was by no means popular. I just fit in. I was a nice guy. People were okay with me. I got teased, but I wouldn't say I got teased much more than my peers. About on par. Um, and what I really always secretly wanted was like to be a celebrity. Like I wanted that pull because I grew up in the 1980s, and it was like a total celebrity festival in my
Yeah, it was.
culture.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, and that's gotten worse. It's like much worse. Then I came of age, and I actually was like sickened by it. I became a musician before I was really a writer, and as I chased success in music, I started to see that it wasn't really about the quality of my music or the quality of our message or anything. It was the quality of like our haircuts, our clothes, our design, how we can present ourselves. And uh, I should have seen that coming. I should have known about it. There's enough autobiographies that talk about it. Even the Rolling Stones dealt with it about 5 years into their career. But I was naive and I was young and I just thought it worked differently. And so I think once I decided to step down from that goal permanently, I still wanted to entertain the world. I still want to be creative, but I don't want to be like I walk on the street and people recognize me. Like I love being an author because even if you do become like really successful, even Stephen King can probably walk into a crowded place and people don't recognize him. They're like,
Well, he used to have a bit part in each of his movies, didn't he? And it was like
yeah, that's true.
spot the king every movie just to see if you could see
Yeah,
him or not. He blended into the background quite well on a number of them. So
yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think like the last like the three most best selling authors like currently are probably Dan Brown,
Mm,
J.K. Rowling, and Stephen King. If I had to guess, I'm trying to
mm,
go back to my
yeah,
memory. But I would
yeah.
just say like the average person recognizes their name on a credit card when they buy their meal, things like that, and that's when they get like the majority of attention. But it's so different from being like even like a normal athlete. Like if you're a good footballer, you're going to get recognized a lot of places. If you're a good actor, you're going to get recognized. And some people like that adulation and that fame, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought it was kind of a problem. And so what the Talisman does is it's a flip of that. It's like for no conceivable reason, people are being nice to her because they want what she has. They're not being nice to her because they want to be friends with someone who did great things. So it works differently, but it explores a lot of those tropes.
So one of the questions that I had actually was about the talisman, kind of like protecting the holder, if I've got that right, and but it also messes with trust and behavior. So what is the actual? I mean, the Lord of the Rings, right? Where he's carrying the ring and it's got a heavy level of dread over him, and it's such a trauma to carry it all the way to Mordor. What is there an equivalent in your story?
No, and intentionally so. I think most of the thrust of the novel is exploring the world through the eyes of a self-proclaimed dumb, ugly person who works at a supermarket and has resigned herself to sitting on a couch, playing a gem game on her phone, and like the evening TV is on, but she's not even watching it. She goes
Yeah,
to sleep, wakes up at 5 a.m. and goes to work, and suddenly she has this thing that is so compelling that it's drawing bad actors into her life, so she wants to get on the move. At some point, she realizes I need to get rid of this, but I can't just give it back to the people who are abusing the power of it because it does have a power, and
mm,
you can use it to create a situation where people covet you and want you and are going to give you things, and that's who the original holders of it were using it for.
right. So that's the sort of equivalent effect, really. It's all these bad actors being influenced to come into a life, and that creates the, I don't know, the desire to get away from it.
Yeah, I just there was a comedy that came out when I was coming of age. It's called "There's Something About Mary." I don't know if it was
Yeah, yeah,
popular.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh no, you haven't got that scene, have you?
no, no. But what I just realized is that you can do the spoiler alert again if it's 1997. But
Oh no, no, it's okay.
okay, so spoiler alert to those of you who have not seen this movie. It's been out for 25 years, I believe. So,
Well,
uh, but there's a scene there's a scene towards the end where you suddenly realize like every single person has been stalking Mary, and that every character in the movie is actually like knows who Mary is and wants to be Mary's boyfriend, but the main character in the movie doesn't know that. And there's sort of a moment like that in the novel where many of the bad actors aren't just like random people who suddenly felt drawn into the talisman. There are people who have been chasing the holder of the talisman throughout the course of
mm.
the talisman's existence, which again started when Cortez's ship crashed somewhere in South America. I did research for the novel, I swear. I just am right now. Not,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You
yeah.
did actually mention that. It's on your website, I think, and
Yeah.
I saw a couple of mentions about where you've actually done the research for this.
Oh, yeah.
So
No, I did a lot of research.
I'm kind of vouching for you,
Yeah.
sticking up for you a bit there. So pace, right, or place, or both, really. So this story runs from Louisiana to Mexico.
Correct.
So you've got a number of places on route between those two, the the place she starts from to the place she ends up. So what did you decide on in terms of non-negotiable truths, where it forces Emma into making choices? And I'm talking things like borders, language, policing, culture, danger, travel time. Out of all of those things, and that's not exhaustive list. What affected her journey in that world? Because I know it's
Well,
an
actually,
adjacent world.
yeah.
Yeah.
Before I answer that directly, I'm gonna give, like, 2 funny quips about it. I started
Hmm.
writing the novel in 2019, and then halfway through the novel, this thing called COVID hit the world. And
Mm,
so the
mm,
story is about traveling to a foreign country, but during COVID, as you remember, that was
mm.
pretty much not possible, or if it was possible, it was hard and different. And
Yeah.
the thing about America is for, all the way up until very, very recently, you could travel to Mexico and back without a passport. You could just have an American ID and go back and safely come back. I believe
Really?
that changed. Yeah. And we had the same agreement with Canada. It ended
Who
earlier with
who
Canada.
who who was responsible for that?
Probably U.S. imperialism, if I had to guess. We probably just demanded that Mexico allow our citizens to travel there. If you fly into Mexico, you have to show a passport, I believe. But if
Right.
you're driving, it's not the same. And I know Canada, we had a very friendly agreement the same way with them, and that ended actually before uh, Donald Trump uh, started an aggressive campaign against Canada here. So
Mm,
that actually
yeah.
ended not for that political reason. I think it was actually just about like security and travel.
Yeah. 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 The normal
So
boring stuff. Yeah.
yeah, the normal. So at the time I was writing the novel, I was like, "Oh no, I have to like just completely change this." Like the world is changing, and I like my books to at least matter for 50 years. I'd like I don't want it
Mm,
to. But I wasn't writing a sci-fi novel, so I was kind of angry. I was like, "Well, this is unfair. Like I'm not trying to get into like." This nitty because I have written sci-fi, and the reason I stopped writing sci-fi is this: I'm actually annoyed by how careful an average sci-fi reader is. So I finished the novel. I sat on it. I got published by a legacy publishing house, a small one, but they for a different novel, and they told me I had to wait 2 years before I could publish anything again. So I sat on this novel for 2 years, and then luckily things changed, things relaxed, and it wasn't as big of a deal. So I was able to change that part. But the reason I spent that much time talking about that is I think as authors, it's actually really interesting that sometimes these weird things come up. And if your culture is changing or if language choices are changing, you have to be, careful with that. They banned the Adventures of Huckleberry Finn in a lot of schools in America now because it uses the N word so much. But
right.
obviously, when Finn was writing it, at least from what we can gather from his notes, that was intentional. It was like to provoke the reader, not to actually just use the word unabashedly. So
Yeah.
this is not at all as serious, but I was treating it that seriously. So that came and went. But then what I needed to press her was that she had no choices because this phantom thing is chasing her. And the thing that's chasing her is still trapped in a human environment, meaning it has to follow the laws of physics. So it doesn't just like teleport or transport. It drives a vehicle and it's always like
Oh,
trying to
very
chase
good.
her down. But the
Yeah.
problem is it can't actually physically harm her because she's holding the talisman. So she knows that this thing wants her and she knows wants the talisman. And she's not naive, but she also just like has a sense of intuition, a strong sense of intuition throughout the novel that tells her like, do not give the talisman to this thing. This is not like the appropriate thing to give the talisman back to. So she abruptly switches plans in the novel from I just want to escape this thing to I need to successfully get rid of the talisman. I need to like finally
Right.
end the Curse of Cortez. So that's what the novel becomes about is ending the Curse of Cortez. So that's the prime driver that keeps her physically moving. And then as far as time goes, time is running out because the bad actors are able to hurt her friend. They are able to hurt things and people she cares about. So she realizes pretty quickly, I can never become friends with anyone. I'm never going to be allowed to just sit in a home. I'm not going to be able to play on my phone and watch TV. I can't go back to my job. Like no matter what I do, I'm cursed by the talisman, and I want to end this curse for the rest of time eternal. So,
Yeah.
and I will, yeah,
Yeah. That's really interesting. Actually, I love the fact that. I mean, I know that we concentrate on this podcast to be about science fiction or fantasy and stuff, but this has got like the magical item. so,
yeah, yeah,
so I'm going with it, and it's in this world, but
yeah.
you've got the magical effect of the talisman affecting everyone and everything around the character Emma.
And I think it's fantasy for me because I am taking the past and extending it into the present, and I'm
Mhm.
using magical realism from the past into the
Yeah,
present. So I think The Ring and Lord of the Rings, while it's not the same, it is like enough of a similarity that I would say that that's kind of the link to that
Yeah,
genre for me.
yeah. Cool. Right. So, in terms of the myth of Cortez and the galleon, I guess, and everything else that goes on around this, do you want to actually explain to people what the myth is and how you've incorporated it into your book?
Yeah, I'll explain how I incorporated it, less explain the myth, because it's actually the epilogue to the novel is the full
Right.
explanation, so I don't want to give that away.
No?
But
Yeah.
chapter 9 or chapter 7, I can't remember because I played around with so much of that. But 7 or 9, it very abruptly goes to a flashback where Emma's remembering her mother telling her a story, and the story she's telling her is the story of how the talisman came to be and how people had heard of it in that regard. So again, like a little bit of a spoiler, but it's not a big deal. And essentially, Cortez was a very successful seafaring explorer, and he had like a lot of luck. This is what a lot of the research taught me. But his luck ran out, and his luck ran out in
Right.
Mexico. And so I decided to make the plot of the novel. Well, what happened? Why did Hernan Cortez's luck run out? And I decided it's because he had a magical talisman, and his crew wanted it, and he
Yeah.
was not able to stop them from getting it. So that's how the Curse of Cortez started.
Brilliant. Yeah. Very good. Just one more question, really, I suppose. I think we talked in our emails about world building, right? And
Mhm.
that it can be done without exposition if character and imagery put the reader in a particular state. Have you got any examples in your book where you've actually not deliberately not explained something and expect the reader to get it anyway? I know it's a bit of a tough question.
Yeah, it's hard. You spend a third of the time writing a novel, and then you spend 2/3 of the time editing it, and then if
Editing
you're
it.
pitch yeah.
Yeah.
So, edited it so many times that I'm having trouble recalling one or an exact moment where that happens, but I can say that, I got an MFA, a Master of Fine Arts in writing, and in school, what I noticed that made me different from my peers was not that I was better or worse, but I was less into like evocative imagery and long, like flowery descriptions, and I
Yeah.
was more into readability, which to me is something that is completely lost in the modern era of like streaming services and television. What I've noticed, sadly, and also in books, is that people put a focus on like this idea that it should just be as dumb as possible. There should be nothing that people have to speculate or think about. So I think my answer to your question is that I actually put a lot of really easy, fun to read sentences, but then I kind of like leave a gasp or a break between the next sentence where the reader can start to imagine on their own what they think this is or is not applying to and how it applies. And then later I also reward readers by confirming their suspicions. But I don't like to be heavy-handed as an author. I like writers who treat me like I have a brain. I definitely, actually, this is not a podcast where I'm gonna give my full negative opinion about the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the sequel. But I would say that Tolkien's inability to do this was actually my biggest problem with reading all of those books when I read them in a row. I still like him. I like his work. And I think that it's overall like a great, great, great idea. But those books could be edited a lot. And they could be edited to do exactly what we're talking about, which is to let the reader kind of imagine a little bit and make their own things. So I think the main thing that I don't describe is the thing that's chasing her. That's the part that I am the most hands off with. I more
That's good.
I explain its effect, and I explain
Yeah.
the effects of it a lot, but I don't explain what it is because I want my readers to imagine it. I don't want them to
Yeah.
see something that like is a model or that this is also why movie adaptations are really hard for me. Like I was a screenwriter and
Oh,
I
really?
write novel. Yeah, so I write screenplays and I write novels and they're so different. You do not use a lot of the same parts of your brain to do one or the other. And sometimes I'm jealous when I'm writing a novel. I'm like, oh, if this was a screenplay, this would take 2 seconds. I would just say enter actor narration device done, you know? And then sometimes when I'm writing a screenplay, I'll be like, oh my God, this is impossible. Like, there's no way to get this rhetorical device to work. You would need it in a novel. It needs to be a persona by a narrator. It can't be an actual character delivering this, or it's cheesy exposition. So,
Yeah,
yeah, so I think
yeah.
the lack of descriptions of that is definitely essential for me.
That's brilliant. That is super because that is a really important part, I think. I mean, if you let the reader imagine the evil character themselves, they're bound to come up with something far worse
Yeah.
than what you've actually would have written, you know. So it's often better, I think. I agree with you. And I totally agree with you about Tolkien as well. It's just 3 pages on a tree is quite enough for me, thanks very much. So oh, I'm gonna get loads of comments on that. No, but I
I
mean,
know.
it's
Two men on the internet talking negatively about Lord of the Rings is not a
yeah,
great idea.
just
But hey, we
just
did
just
it.
can't do it. Just can't do it. Right. So basically, I think that's about it in terms of what the questions I had. Right? Have you got anything that you would like to add at all to this?
Yeah, I think just on the last note that I was talking about, one of the things that I think is interesting about the novel is it explores like the banality of evil and like all these ideas about like, well, what is evil? Because the thing chasing her is not evil per se, it's chasing her. It wants something she has. But many of the characters chasing her are people who are immoral. They have crossed ethical lines. She knows it, they know it. And so I'm kind of also exploring that, like the not behavioral economics, but behavioral ethics.
Yeah.
You know, like something I have a big pet peeve because I grew up in California, so I grew up
Mm.
among a lot of people who think I can throw trash on the street, but I'll vote for anti-littering laws. Like this like passive attitude towards change, whereas like real change is just change. Like if you think bullying is a problem, stop bullying.
Stop
You know,
bullying. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, like so. I think the
At
novel
every
explores
point of the
those
way
things.
as well. If you're a teacher, spot it.
Spot
Right.
it.
Okay. So, anything else? Where can they get you? They can get your book at your website, can't they?
Yeah, actually, I'm offering like a special promotion, and it's going to last all year. So I released the book in 2026 this year,
Mhm.
and what I decided was because it's on Amazon, you can certainly buy it if you want to read the print edition. You can also buy the Kindle edition. But if you go to my website and you sign up for a 1 month subscription to my services, which include videos, podcasts, essays, novels, tons of stuff. I'm a very active person.
Very
For just a
creative.
one
Yeah.
month fee, you'll get an email with a link, and the link will be for the PDF, and it's Kindle friendly. I'm somewhat good at, I'm proficient at programming ebooks.
Proficient. Yeah.
I'm actually better than a professional I hired once, which is why I decided to start doing it myself. I once paid a
Oh,
professional; and they did a worse job than I did. So,
wow.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's well formatted. It'll pop into anything you use to read, not just the Kindle, but any of the devices that use ebooks. And so that's one way to get it, and it's cheaper that way. But also with that, you get the premium subscription to my services, which include like personal essays that are behind paywalls and things like that, and an archive of thousands, literally, of articles I've written. So and fiction. But if you prefer, you can also go to Amazon. But the link to Amazon is also on my website. So if you go to my website, which should be underneath my picture here as I talk and you
Yeah.
talk. You can find
MikeYop.com.
it there. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm just a prolific creative type. I don't think I'm better than anyone, and I certainly don't think I'm worse than anyone. I think that
Mm.
we're all just interestingly and uniquely different, and this is my hat in the ring, you know? So,
We're all just making our way, aren't we? That's
yeah,
what we're doing.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Well, thanks very much for your time, Mike. And I'm so pleased we eventually got on this. So
Yeah,
there was a few emails backwards and forwards, wasn't there? And it's like, oh my God, he's gonna
yeah.
run and go and not come on the show. But no, you
No, no, no.
stuck
Quite the
through it.
opposite.
So well
Yeah,
done.
yeah.
All right. Thanks very much, and Mike. Cheers.
Thank you, John.